Good afternoon. I'm Michael Moulton from the Department of Health and Human Performance, where I'm a professor and graduate coordinator. We have two programs, one in public health and one in sport administration. In 2020, I was awarded the Violet Schaefer Endowed Professorship, and I proposed a project that would have our graduate students in sport administration explore the options of a economic impact in community components and in sport components in Natchitoches. And so we had a discussion with a lot of graduate students to find out where they had some struggles and thoughts. And the idea was to prepare them so that they had an understanding, a design understanding, and the ability to implement an economic impact study. So in essence, I was teaching them a research project. Our students are fairly prepared for this because they take a stats class and they take a research class. So as they were moving into the ending part of their program, they were taking a budgeting class. And this was a perfect opportunity to have them actually go through and implement a research project. Our society loves sport. We had last month a Super Bowl where 100 million people watched the game, and several businesses even paid $7 million for a 30-second commercial. And so those kinds of demonstrations show that sport has value. But the struggles that our sport administration students have is being able to identify specifically what kind of revenue streams are coming in. When they put on an event, they're struggling with the game time event, the timing, the videos, all of the idiosyncrasies of putting on events. But we really don't take the time to look at how money is coming into a community and where are they spending the money. And that's specifically the challenge that I put to the sports administration students, to understand the value of these events. And so we provided them with this opportunity. I provided them with the opportunity. EI studies help us provide data to understand the revenue streams that are coming into these particular programs. And so what I had done was develop a process that allowed the students to walk through as a group and develop a research project from beginning to end so that they could then take that skill set and move on to their jobs. So let me share a little bit about what we have the students do. In phase one, the introductory phase, we have them do the same kinds of things you would do in a research project. They would do a lit review. I had put together a number of different types of PowerPoints for them to explore the process. I had an educational component where they had articles that they reviewed, and they actually were able to see studies that I had completed and allowed them to look at all the different phases that they were going to be able to walk through. So this familiarization process was important for them to get their head in the game. They worked within groups and they were able to solidify an understanding of what was ahead of them. Phase two. This is the study development phase. And in this phase, what I asked the students to do was to work in groups, and they were to identify an event that they were passionate about, that they wanted to learn more about. So we had 16 graduate students that were picking a variety of different events. Some picked sporting events, some picked community events. I even had a person pick the Zawali Tamale Festival. And so they went out and explored that particular option. And so as they picked these events, it then became important for us to move to the next phase, and that's development of a a process for them to collect the data, which we did that through survey. So this is survey research. And in this research, the students went into the community to see the kinds of things that they would have to ask about. Obviously, they were looking at my past research projects, but it gave them an idea of what kind of things they might want to ask on the survey. Where did they eat? What kind of entertainment did they do? How much did they spend at the game? Did they spend money in concessions? Did they spend money on gas? What hotel? Did they go to a B&B? Did they go to a Motel 6? Or did they go to a Marriott? And the students then were asked to develop a range of amounts for each one of these, because as they began to think about this, they also thought, I'm going to be interviewing. So they have to not only ask, did you stay in a hotel, but where did you stay? And then identifying a number with that. We also had them in their survey look at where the individuals came from. And I think this is an important part of an economic study, is we wanted to know what was the distance that they came to come to the event. And we wanted to know, and I put a line in the sand and said, okay, let's say if people came from 30 miles away, they were going to be new money. And new money basically means it's money that's not going to be spent in the community normally. They would probably spend the money closer to home. So this event is pulling new money into our community, which creates a lot of power and helps us with understanding the value of bringing that new money in. If they were local, we called it old money. So we were identifying that in the survey. So the students developed the survey. That was wonderful and really got them excited about thinking about where they're at and the kinds of things they were able to do. It became doable to them. So then we moved to phase 3. And phase 3 was the data collection. And it's important for this part of the study for them to realize that they were actually doing a research project. And so they were going out and practicing with each other in groups their skills at asking questions. Most of them did it on pencil and paper. Some of them had iPads. Some of them did it on their computers, depending on the type of computer. And they would check it as they were asking the individuals that were coming up to the event that they were analyzing. And it's important to know that we had some strategies with that. We wanted to make sure that they were doing a random sample that was appropriate. They were going to ask every third person, or they were going to ask every fifth person. They had to think strategically, where were they going to stand to be able to get the most individuals that were attending that particular game. What time did they do it? Did they do it at the end, or did they do it in the beginning? Did they do it at halftime? Did they walk through the stadium, or did they do it outside before the stadium? So they were making decisions about that so they could clarify it, and made a comprehensive plan on how they were going to implement the data collection. Most of these students, depending on the event, had an N size about 50. Some had 100. Certainly the larger events like a NSU football game, they were able to get 100. Some students that looked at a soccer game, it was a lower, maybe a 35 number, depending on the number of people at the event. And so the next phase, once they got the data collection, they collected this, they brought their surveys back, then you had to go through phase 4, which is results, analyze the data, an action statement, looking at how they present it and how they communicate their findings. And this was the part where they were able to go through and get the meat of the data. Now the important thing is here, we're going to come up with an economic impact study, and you've probably heard them that, for example, Florida State did a research project maybe 10, 12 years ago that said they made $64 million on, the home games for their team. $64 million. And so these astronomical components are really difficult to grasp. You've got to be able to hug the information. And so our students were taught to break down the data and put it in components that they were able to understand. So they would know How many people went and stayed at a hotel? How many ate at a restaurant? How many ate at a restaurant that's fine dining? And so they were able to stratify the information to allow them to understand where to go. And that's an important point, because as you begin to analyze the data, you want to be able to pick those things out, because that gives you power. Power in the ability to know where you might want to develop a partner, where you might want to develop a sponsor, where you might want to look at where you could go get monies to add to your budget. It gave you information to make a data-driven decision about using individuals and partners that benefit from you putting on your event. So next time you're at an event and you have the opportunity to fill out a survey, or you just happen to walk by someone who has a pencil and paper and a clipboard, you can then think, I bet you they're doing an economic impact study, and maybe you might stop in and help them. Thank you for your time and effort of listening to my presentation. I wish you well.